Warning: some contents may be disturbing. Viewer discretion is advised.
Hi Reddit, I'm Sarah and I'm 30. I work in graphic design. My job is great, but it doesn't leave a lot of room for socializing. So I figured dating apps might help me connect with someone interesting. After a few weeks of swiping, I matched with someone who seemed genuinely nice. His name was Ben, and he appeared to have a lot in common with me. He looked friendly in his pictures, and we started chatting and hitting it off quickly. It really felt good to have someone to talk to, especially someone who shared similar interests. Over the course of a month, Ben and I exchanged countless messages and even moved on to phone calls. He seemed charming and attentive, always remembering little things that I mentioned in passing. We talked about everything from music to our favorite movies, and it just seemed like he really got me, you know? So when he suggested meeting up, I thought that it was about time to see if we would click in person. I mean, it's been more than a month at this point, and I thought that it was enough to recognize if the person you were meeting was a red flag or not. And Ben was definitely not. We decided to meet at a local cafe. Cliché, I know, but it's one of the safest bet when meeting someone for the first time. It was a busy spot, which made me feel comfortable. Ben was there, looking just like his photos. He greeted me warmly, gave me a little peck on my cheek, and we then settled into our table, diving into conversation as easily as we had online. As the date went on, everything seemed perfect. Ben was engaging, attentive, asking questions and sharing stories about his life. But there were small moments that didn't sit right. He occasionally glanced around the room in a way that seemed overly cautious, almost like he was checking if someone was watching. Once or twice, he hesitated when talking about his family, quickly changing the subject. Despite these moments, the date went really well, and we ended up meeting a few more times. And each time, I noticed small inconsistencies in his stories. He seemed to be avoiding giving me straight answers about his family, his work, which was strange considering how open he had been before. There were also moments when he seemed to hide during the dates. Like, rather than sitting in the open, he would choose the furthest table or some place obscured from sight. Well, things took a turn one evening when we went out for dinner. I was able to persuade him to sit somewhere more open, more breathable for a lack of a better term. We were sitting outside at a nice restaurant, just having a great time, when a woman approached our table. She looked directly at Ben and then called him by a different name. I was confused, but Ben's reaction was what really threw me. He went pale, his expression shifting from surprise to what looked like guilt. The woman then introduced herself as Anna and claimed that she was his wife. I felt the ground shift beneath me. I was utterly blindsided. Although small red flags suddenly made sense, Ben, or whatever his real name was, had been lying to me the entire time. He wasn't single, he was married. Anna seemed hurt but composed. She was explaining that she had suspected something was off for a while. She apologized for the interruption, which honestly she didn't have to. But her words were more directed at Ben than me. I could see years of emotions in her eyes, a mix of betrayal and sadness. Ben tried to explain, but his words were empty, lacking the charm that they once held. I felt a mixture of anger and disbelief. How could I have been so blind to the truth? The person that I thought I knew had been a complete fabrication. In that moment, I just apologized to Anna and explained briefly how I had no idea at all. I then excused myself, needing to escape the situation. My hands were shaking as I walked away, and I left Ben and Anna to their confrontation. This betrayal cut deep, leaving me questioning my judgment and the sincerity of every interaction that we had. And back at home, I deleted Ben's number and our message history. I was trying to erase the memory of what had happened. I felt extremely bad. I have always been against cheating. My dad cheated on my mom, and I saw how it broke my mother and crumbled my own family. But look at me now. I'm the other woman. I know I didn't mean to. I didn't know. But I wish that I had done something else to check more before diving into dating Ben or whoever that guy is. I uninstalled the app that night, and I vowed to be more cautious in the future. I shared my story with my best friend and my mom, but other than that, I kept it to myself. It was an embarrassing and traumatizing experience. Maybe next time I date someone, I should run a background check on them or something. But jokes aside, Ben, or whatever your name is, I hope your wife left you, and let's not meet ever again. Let me tell you about this wild story that one of my friends shared with me. It's enough to make anyone stop and think twice about who they bring home. This girl, let's call her Jess, works as a bartender. She's pretty savvy with money and usually has a decent chunk of change saved up. Anyway, she went on a Tinder date with this guy, and from what she told me, it wasn't anything spectacular, but not terrible either. Apparently, it was just smooth enough that she felt okay about inviting him back to her place afterward. He left the next morning, and she chalked it up to a one-night stand. No big deal, right? Or so she thought. A few days roll by, and she goes to buy something with her debit card, only to have it declined. This was weird because, as I said, she's good with her finances, and it didn't make any sense. So she decided to dig a little deeper into her bank account. When she checked her account, she saw a bunch of charges that she didn't recognize. Best Buy, Grubhub, and a string of other random transactions. She was shocked. Her mind raced back to the guy from Tinder. It was the only explanation that made sense, you know? A bit concerned, she checked her credit card too, only to find that it was riddled with charges for streaming services like Netflix, Hulu, Sling, you name it. There was a charge for it. It was like someone had gone on a subscription spree with her money. Jess was fuming. She tried to reach out to the guy to confront him about it, but his Tinder profile had vanished, and they added each other on Facebook, so she checked that too, but she was already blocked. It was as if he never existed. But then she remembered that they had a mutual friend on Facebook. Clinging to that slim chance, she reached out to see if that friend could help locate him. As it turned out, Jess wasn't the first to fall into this trap. The mutual friend had a similar story, a night together, followed by mysterious charges appearing on their accounts. It was like this guy had a routine, targeting people and then using their trust against them. I could see the frustration in Jess's eyes as she recounted her ordeal. She went through all the right motions afterward. She reported the fraud, got new cards, and made sure that all her accounts were secure. It was really a hassle, but at least she stopped him before it could get worse. Hearing her story made me think about how easy it is to fall for someone's act and how quickly things can go sideways. Hey there. I felt I needed to share something that happened to me recently. I don't know why. Maybe just to get it off my chest. Or maybe to help warn others. My name is Lily, and as embarrassing as it may sound, I have only ever had one boyfriend in my life, and that was during high school. But then we had to split up when we decided to go to separate universities. Ever since that relationship ended, I just focused on school and my goals in life. Of course, I'm the victim of constant jokes and teasing from my family, asking me things like, "When are you gonna get a boyfriend, Lily?" Or, "Will I ever see a grandchild from you in this lifetime?" At first it annoyed me, but I got used to it and I laughed it off every time. But last summer, my cousin got married and I was there as a bridesmaid. And for the first time in a very long time, I thought to myself how it would be nice to probably have someone and get married. But the problem is, I work in advertising. Life can get pretty hectic, and with my job being so demanding and time-consuming, I found it hard to meet new people. There were a few male co-workers, but I have a firm belief to never date co-workers at all. So, I decided to give Tinder a try, hoping that it would fit into my busy schedule and maybe even lead me to someone special. I had spent some time on the app and I have checked some profiles out, and I've even swiped on a few. But nothing and no one really clicked to me until I matched with someone who seemed interesting. His name was Ethan. His profile showed a handsome guy with dark hair and a charming smile. He looked like he had a good sense of style, and his bio said that he was into tech and cooking. We chatted for a bit over the app and eventually decided to meet up for dinner. It was going to be my first date in a very long time, so I was kind of nervous. I asked my best friend to help me choose my clothes and do some light makeup on just so I look cute. The restaurant we were set to meet wasn't too fancy, but it was decent enough to dress nicely. The restaurant wasn't too far from my flat too, probably a 15 to 20 minute drive, so I left a bit early, around 30 minutes before the set time for the date. I wanted to have some time to freshen up and also calm myself down before he arrives. Luckily, there was no traffic, so I arrived 15 minutes before our date. I parked, I went inside, and I was heading to the bathroom when I spotted Ethan. Ethan was there, waiting and sitting. He was dressed casually yet neatly. He had a certain presence about him, confident but not overly so. But there was a certain look in his eyes that I thought was weird. I'm sorry, I'm not exactly sure how to explain it, but it looked like he was upset. I wasn't sure what the reason was. I wasn't late, and I just arrived, so I haven't done anything. So I assumed that something must have happened before he got to the restaurant. I signaled that I was going to the bathroom, and when I came back, I sat down and I greeted him again properly this time. He smiled, but it looked kind of fake, and then he made a snarky comment about how I still had the audacity to go to the bathroom despite making him wait already. He said it in a joking way, so I just chuckled awkwardly. But I thought that it was weird and a bit rude, since I wasn't late to begin with, and that I had plenty of time to even go to the bathroom. As we settled into the evening, the conversation flowed and I was starting to relax. Though, I did notice a few odd things about him. His expression occasionally shifted to something grim, and he had a habit of clicking his tongue when listening when I said something that he didn't agree with or that didn't align to the things he stands for, as he says, which seemed a bit unprofessional to me. I just brushed it aside, telling myself that everyone has their quirks. As the night went on, his demeanor started to show some more cracks. When the server got his side dish wrong, he banged the table a little too hard, and though he tried to laugh it off, there was an edge to his voice. When he was slightly rude to the server, it gave me a pause. But since his mood seemed to bounce back quickly, I gave him the benefit of the doubt. After all, he wasn't directing any of that frustration toward me. Looking back at it now, I was probably just really naive since I haven't had a date in a long time. But damn, did that guy had so many red flags. Luckily, the conversation still flowed easily enough. But then, it turned to politics. It's the kind of topic that I wouldn't really expect on a first date, but he was the one who brought it up. I didn't think much of it though. People have different views, and I figured that it could make for an engaging discussion. Besides, he was the one who brought it up. But something about my opinions didn't sit well with him. I could see a change in his eyes, a sharpness that hadn't been there before. And suddenly, he went from being slightly tense to then full-on angry. It became intense really quickly. One minute we were talking, and the next minute he was screaming at me. His voice rose. He started yelling, not just disagreeing with the things that I said, but berating me. I was taken aback, but I was trying to calm him down, but it only seemed to fuel his anger. Heads turned in the restaurant as the volume of his voice drew attention. I felt the heat of embarrassment and fear creeping up my neck as the people in the restaurant began looking our way. I also saw the restaurant manager making his way towards us, possibly to defuse the situation. But before anything could be done, Ethan grabbed his glass of water and then hurled it in my direction. In my view, everything seemed to slow down. I managed to dodge it, but unfortunately, a server behind me took the full hit. In that moment, another customer who I later learned was a recently retired Marine sprang into action. He tackled Ethan to the ground, pinning him down, while others called for an ambulance and the police. Despite being restrained, Ethan continued to scream, his face twisted with anger, making him look like a completely different person. His face was flushed, and you could see the veins on his forehead, and you could also see bubbles on each side of his lips. It was actually terrifying to see someone unravel so completely and so quickly at that. The police and the ambulance arrived swiftly, taking control of the situation. They took care of the server, and Ethan was detained. He was still shouting and thrashing, his eyes wild and unseeing. Things started to calm down when the police took Ethan and then shoved him behind the police car. There were 3 officers inside the restaurant, and one asked me to give my statement. It all felt surreal. And once I was done, I finally headed home. My hands were still slightly trembling from the adrenaline and the shock. And back in the safety of my house, I sat in silence for a while, processing everything. It was clear to me that I needed to take a break to focus on myself and definitely my safety. I uninstalled Tinder, and I decided that I wouldn't be swiping right on anyone for the foreseeable future. In the end, it was a harsh reminder of how unpredictable people can be and how careful we need to be when letting new people into our lives. It's an experience that I wouldn't wish on anyone, but one that I felt was important to share. So Ethan, I hope that you are getting the help that you clearly need. I recently felt the need to share a story from my life. It's not often that I put things out there like this, but sometimes it's necessary to shine a light on the strange experiences that can happen in the world. I'm 25 and I'm female, and I would like to stay anonymous. I have been single for a while now, and it took me a while to even think about getting back into the dating scene. Meeting new people just doesn't happen often for me. But after moving to a new city, the loneliness really hit me hard. I didn't know anyone, and making friends at work was slow going. So, in an attempt to connect with people around me, I turned to dating apps like Bumble and Tinder. It didn't take too long to match with someone. His profile caught my eye. A cute guy, and good job, and we had shared interest. I mean, what more could I need to start talking to someone, right? It also said that we were both new to the area too. We chatted for about a week, we exchanged numbers after a few days, and our conversations ranged from work to hobbies to even life philosophies. He was kind and he was interesting. He was funny at times, and he paid attention to the things that I said. He wasn't perfect though, of course, no one is. There were times when he would ask or say some odd things, but they weren't too bad. I would call him out about it, and then I just brushed it off after he apologized, thinking that it was just a brief lapse in judgment. I decided to give him the benefit of the doubt. So after a week of chatting, he asked to meet in person. He insisted on a public place to ensure that I felt safe, which I appreciated. He then suggested dinner followed by a beer, which sounded like a fun plan to be honest. He picked a cafe for our meeting spot, which sounded normal, so I didn't overthink anything at all. The cafe was near a park, bustling with people. I spotted him chatting with a group of people outside of the cafe, and I approached him with a casual hug. I noticed that he seemed distant and a bit put off by what I did, but then he offered a polite smile and said, "Oh, how are you?" In response, trying to break the ice, I complimented him on looking even better in person compared to his pictures online. But he reacted unexpectedly. His eyes widened, and then he turned to ask the group, whom I assume were his friends, and ask who set him up, and then everyone denied being involved in this. He then asked me who I thought he was. I was so confused, and I explained that we had been talking on Tinder. He then showed me his phone. There was no Tinder there. He apologized for the mix-up as I showed him the profile pictures that matched his face. I didn't even apologize. I was so utterly embarrassed, so I just turned around and left. While walking back to my car, my phone buzzed with a message that said, "LOL." It was just mocking and laughing at me. I tried calling the number to give it a piece of my mind, but it was disconnected already. By the time that I got home, the profile had vanished too. I just blocked the number to prevent any further surprises. With the photo saved, I did a reverse image search and I stumbled upon his real Facebook. His real name was different, and he was actually a few years older too. I just felt betrayed and violated, and I wasn't sure what to make of it. So I decided to message the actual guy. I was explaining the bizarre encounter and also apologize for the confusion. Surprisingly, he replied, and he expressed his own shock at the situation. He even offered to take me out for a drink to make amends. But it's too late. I've developed trust issues now, and I just couldn't bring myself to accept it. So yeah, I'm just glad that it ended up with me just being embarrassed, and that I got home safely. I want to share a story that a friend told me recently, and it's probably the scariest thing that I have ever heard. It's a reminder for us all to be careful and always stay safe, especially when we're meeting new people. This happened to a friend of a friend not too long ago, and it's something that I think everyone should hear. So, this girl, let's call her Emily, matched with a guy on Tinder. At first, everything seemed to be going perfectly. They went on a couple of dates, both of which were pretty casual, just coffee and walks outside. She really liked him and thought that he was friendly and good-looking. It seemed like they clicked, and she was excited about where things might be headed. By the time that they planned their third date, Emily felt comfortable with him. He suggested that they hang out in his place and have some wine. She of course agreed, feeling that she knew him well enough to trust him. It seemed like a natural progression from their previous dates. When the evening came, Emily went over to his place and everything started off well. He poured her a glass of wine and they sat together, just joking around and having a nice conversation. The atmosphere was so relaxed and she was enjoying the evening. But after a little while, she started to feel strange. She knew something was wrong, and a wave of uneasiness washed over her. In a stroke of luck, if you can call it that, this wasn't her first experience with being drugged, so she recognized the feeling almost immediately. Her mind raced, but she kept her cool. Emily knew that she had to act as if she had noticed nothing. She told him that she needed to use the bathroom and did her best to sound normal and cheerful. And once she was in the bathroom, she locked the door and then called the police, explaining that she had been drugged and that she was in danger. And shortly after, she passed out. The next thing Emily remembers is waking up with the police there. She was still under the influence of whatever she had been given, so she was drifting in and out of consciousness. The details were hazy, but she felt the police putting a bag over her head as they carried her out of there. It was a strange sensation, adding another layer of confusion to an already bewildering situation. But thank God, Emily was safe. It was also thanks to the quick response of the police. And days later, she was called to the station to give her full account of what happened. After sharing her story, she asked about the bag over her head. Was it real, or was it just something her mind had conjured in the haze of the drugs? The officers confirmed that they had indeed covered her head. But the reason that they gave sent chills down her spine. They told her that they did it for her own protection, sparing her from seeing something in the living room, something that the guy had set up for her. And even now, she doesn't know what was waiting for her outside that bathroom door, but it was enough to make her stomach turn at the very thought of it. Of course, the man ended up being arrested and thankfully put in jail. I can't help but shudder when I think about how differently things could have turned out if Emily hadn't been so quick thinking. It's terrifying to imagine what might have happened. This story is a powerful reminder to always be cautious, even when things seem to be going well through your dates. It's crucial to let someone know where you are and who you're with. It's also a good idea to have a friend check in on you during and after a date. You never know when these precautions might make all the difference. In the end, Emily's story could have had a much darker outcome, and it's fortunate that she trusted her instincts and also acted so quickly. I just hope that sharing this reminds everyone to take care of themselves and always stay vigilant. I want to share a strange experience that I had recently that left me feeling uneasy and a bit creeped out. For context, I'm lesbian and I'm very direct and open about that. It all started when I connected with this girl on a dating app. She seemed nice enough, and after chatting for a bit, we decided to meet up for coffee. It felt like a casual, low-pressure way to get to know each other better. And the day of the meetup came, I headed to the coffee shop. I got there right on time, and I found a table, expecting her to show up any minute. I waited a while and tried not to feel too awkward sitting alone. But after about 20 minutes, I started to get a bit impatient, so I messaged her to see what was going on. Her response was not at all what I expected. She admitted that she wasn't who she said she was. The person that I had been talking to was actually a guy. He had been catfishing me, pretending to be a girl just so he could watch me in person. And the weirdest part was that he didn't ask for anything inappropriate or try to get me to send pictures. He just wanted to see me in real life. As if the revelation wasn't unsettling enough, he started ranting about how it was such a shame that I was a lesbian because he thought that I was attractive. It was bizarre, and I was feeling uncomfortable, like being caught in a bad dream. I was sitting there, sipping my coffee, feeling exposed and confused, knowing that someone was likely watching me from somewhere close by. The whole situation left me with a chill, and I didn't know how to react at first. There was no direct threat, but the idea that someone went to such length just to see me in person was deeply unsettling. It felt like a violation of my privacy, like I'd been unwittingly pulled into someone else's world without my consent. Looking back, I'm just grateful that nothing worse happened. I'm more careful now, and I take extra steps to verify who I'm talking to before agreeing to meet up. It's unfortunate that it takes an experience like this to really drive the point home, you know? But it's something that I'll carry with me moving forward. Hi everyone, I'm Jessie. I'm a female and I'm 28. I just wanted to share a story of mine after reading quite a bit on here. I never thought that I would one day find myself in the world of online dating, but I guess life is a way of pushing you in unexpected directions. After breaking up with my longtime boyfriend, I found myself with a void that I didn't quite know how to fill. We had been together for years, and when things fell apart, it felt like a piece of my routine and my life had vanished. My friends who were always eager to help me suggested that I give dating apps a try, and they said that it was the perfect way to meet new people without much pressure, just casual and easy. I was a bit hesitant, but they said that it's not that I should be dating someone right off the bat, but just something small and simple that would take my mind off the breakup, and I agreed with that. So, reluctantly, I downloaded Tinder. I was hesitating at first, but then diving into the profile, swiping through faces, and reading a lot of bios, it quickly became clear that this was a whole different world, just full of possibilities but also unknowns. I know, it sounds a bit cheesy, but it was my first time using a dating app, and I think I was a bit excited. Just to mention, I work in marketing. It's a job that I love for its creativity and also the constant interaction with people. But even with my social nature, the idea of meeting strangers online for the purposes of dating was very intimidating to me. One evening, after a long day at work, I matched with a guy named Tom. His profile showed a warm smile and he seemed really genuine. His interest was in hiking and also shared a love for dogs, which definitely scored immediate points with me since I also have one. After a few messages back and forth, he suggested that we meet for dinner. Despite my nerves, I agreed, thinking that it would be a good idea to push myself out of my comfort zone. I know now, though, that it was definitely a mistake to meet too soon, but again, I was new to this. We met on a chilly Friday evening. The restaurant that he had chosen was cozy, and as I walked in, I spotted Tom at a table near the back. He stood up to greet me with that same warm smile on the photos, and the initial conversation flowed easily. We talked about our jobs, hobbies, the usual get-to-know-you topics, and especially talked about our dogs. And it felt nice. I was outside and I was doing something different. As dinner progressed, Tom suggested going to his place for dessert. He claimed to have made a special recipe himself, and I was curious. I thought that it was special and sweet, and it seemed harmless enough, and I was enjoying the evening so far. I haven't noticed any red flags or weird behavior from him, so I agreed. His apartment was nearby, and walking there seemed like a great idea, giving us a chance to enjoy the evening air. When we got there, my first impression of his place was that it was neat, the kind of apartment that felt lived in but tidy. I noticed small details like a stack of books on the coffee table, paintings on the walls, photos of places that he traveled to, and it was comfortable. I definitely felt at ease, thinking that I had lucked out with a genuinely nice guy. While he was busy in the kitchen, I noticed a sudden shift in the atmosphere. The air felt different, heavier somehow, and I couldn't quite place why. I then heard a click, and I realized that he had locked the door. It was a simple act, but in that moment, it sent a shiver down my spine. I tried to shake it off, of course, telling myself that it was nothing. It was just a precaution when you are in the city. I mean, someone else might break in or something. You always have to lock your doors, right? But my instincts were quietly raising alarms, and I just didn't know why. I also noticed that when we got to his place, there was no dog to greet us. I asked him about it, and he seemed confused. But then he just said that his dog was with his parents. It was a bit odd to me. I mean, that could be true. But as I looked around, I did not see anything that hinted that he had a dog with him. There were no food bowls, water bowls, dog bed, toys, or whatever. Also, the way that he reacted, it was like he didn't know or remember that he was supposed to have a dog. And until now, I don't know if that dog existed or if he just lied about it. As he prepared the dessert, I noticed that he was becoming increasingly insistent on me trying it. That doesn't sound weird if I say it like that, but it was the way he said it and how insistent he was. It was how his face was devoid of emotion while saying it, but his voice was cheery. It just didn't match, you know? His demeanor shifted from laid back to almost urgent, a change that made my unease grow. I started paying more attention to the details around me. The kitchen, while spotless, felt oddly sterile, almost like it lacked personality, like it was from a hospital, you know? Despite the welcoming decor in the living room, this part of the apartment seemed different, colder, and less inviting. It was like it was a kitchen from a whole different house because it just did not go with the vibe of the other rooms. While I stayed seated, he began to talk, his words slipping into a ramble filled with topics that were slightly off. To be honest, I didn't understand what he was saying. It was just so different compared to our conversation in the restaurant earlier. It was as if I was with a completely different person now. The charm he had was gone, and it was replaced by something unsettling. I felt like I was in danger and trapped for some reason. My mind raced, trying to decide how to respond to this, whether I should make an excuse or just simply leave. The situation felt surreal, like I was watching it unfold from outside my own body. The warmth and the friendliness from the dinner had evaporated, and all that I had right now was suspicion and fear. In that moment, I realized that I needed to leave. I had to extract myself from a situation that felt increasingly dangerous. I gathered my courage and I made an excuse about needing to check on my dog, who was supposedly with a neighbor. I lied and I said that they texted me that there was something wrong. It was a flimsy reason, but it was all that I could think of on the spot. His reaction was tense, his eyes searching mine for something that I couldn't quite decipher. But as I moved towards the door, he didn't stop me. Instead, he just stood there staring at me with that unsettling look again. He didn't say a word at all. My heart pounded as I unlocked the door and I stepped out, feeling the rush of relief as the night air hit my face. Once I was outside, I did not look back. I walked quickly away from that place, back to the restaurant, and then to my car. My mind was racing with what ifs. I was safe, but I was shaken by how close I had come to an unknown danger. Some of you might think that maybe I was just overreacting, but my gut was screaming at me that something was wrong and that I was in danger. But I'm just grateful that I didn't end up knowing what the danger was. So everyone, please stay safe.
And here's the riddle for this video. Hello everyone, it's your creepy sister here. Thank you so much for watching the video. I really appreciate it. I would also like to give some extra love to my Patreon members, my channel members, and also my tippers. Thank you so much. If you would like to extend a little bit more support for the channel, don't forget to leave a like and a comment down below. If you would like to become a Patreon member, a channel member, a tipper, or even to buy merch, check out the links in the description below. Again, thank you. And I hope you stay scared, because your fear feeds me.